Hello, people. I was gonna say hello, people of Earth. But how are you guys doing? Hopefully you guys are all doing good. I guess we'll start a little bit early just because we got a lot to kind of go through. Obviously, this one's going to be a hefty one because we got a lot of submissions to run through. Unfortunately, not going to be able to go through everyone's, but we'll see how many we can fit in. But there's not only submissions, we got some other bonus stuff to go through as well. So it's going to be a bit of a doozy in terms of the amount of content we have to run through. But yeah, maybe we'll run a little bit longer than usual, but thought we'd start a little bit, just a teensy bit earlier, just to say hello and welcome everybody in. Glad to see that people are already kind of hopping into the stream and saying hello. So also hello everybody back. And yeah, definitely for sure stick to the end of the stream. We got a little cool announcement, especially for those who kind of know. We'll be announcing the winner for our Chinese opera character kind of competition that happened over at Discord. So if you guys were like, wait, what? There was a competition? Yeah, there was a competition. And if you want to kind of keep in touch or kind of stay updated with some other fun stuff that we do, definitely join our Discord. That's kind of one of the best places to stay up to date with what we do here. So yeah, but glad you guys are able to join us. I put up a few characters that I've done on my own, so I don't know, I thought it'd be fun. All these characters were done during our XPPen kind of workshop, but I feel like this is kind of pretty close to how I normally draw, and they all turned out pretty good, so I thought, you know, since this is a character critique stream, why not throw up some of my own character designs as well, that I thought turned out not too bad, considering that these were all done within like about an hour and a half or so. Yeah, I would say not too bad. But yeah, okay, so with I guess that being said, it's about, oh, I guess it is 9 o'clock. I guess we'll get started. So hello everybody, and hope you guys are all having a good Monday. I know that Mondays are usually not the most exciting days for people, but hopefully we provide a nice little winding down spot for you guys, and we get a have a nice way to end your day here on Monday, but hopefully the rest of the week turns out not too bad. But yeah, so hello and welcome to our stream. If you don't know who we are Wing Canvas, and our mission at Wing Canvas is to make art education easily accessible to everybody. So join us for free live stream lessons on YouTube every week and level up your skills with our community of art nerds. And if you guys didn't know, we stream every Saturday at 3 p.m. Eastern, and then on Monday at 9 p.m. Eastern. So if you guys are ever curious, or if first time joining us and you're like, wait, you guys stream every week? When do you stream? Well, we stream Saturdays and on Mondays. And we're not just a YouTube channel, we're also a online school of illustration and visual storytelling dedicated to helping artists turn their passion into income. So a huge shout out to our amazing students and members for supporting our mission. We love seeing your incredible artwork and watching you guys grow in our classes and weekly critiques. And if you'd like to dive deeper, join our Discord to access stream notes and demos and exclusive artwork, art challenges, and more free resources to help you improve. Come connect with your fellow art nerds and get inspired. So again, if you guys don't know that we're on Discord, Discord's probably like the best place to stay connected with everything that we do, not just on YouTube, but also for schools, our programs, also some like fun challenges and thematic, I guess, art challenges and prompts that we kind of throw out every month. And I guess that's a good segue to jump into our monthly art challenges. So like I mentioned real quickly, if you guys didn't know, every month we have an art challenge over at Discord. So if you're on our Discord, definitely jump over into the art challenge section. So if you scroll down a little bit, you'll see a subcategory that says community creates, and this month's art challenge was scenic sketches. And so if you guys don't know, for every stream we usually like to shout out our community and just share back the love that they kind of give to us when they join our Discord and support us. So we like to shout out our community and spotlight their submissions. And for this month, it was scenic sketches, so a lot of environmental paintings, a lot of landscape paintings, but unfortunately for this month, because it's also like coincides with Canadian Thanksgiving, we might not be able to shout out too much as we usually do, so yeah, but I'll try to shout out a few on this one just in case we don't get too much of an opportunity to do so. So here, let me see, are the art challenges that I found over at Discord. So the first one up is Castle. I feel like Castle was here. I saw you say hello, so I'm pretty sure you're here in the chat, or I don't know if you hopped off, but this is your piece here. I feel like I've also seen a few of your pieces over at the XPPen workshop chats as well. Like, I feel like you share some of your paintings, and you have a very painterly, very brushstroke approach to painting, and I feel like it's the exact same with your landscape paintings. Very textural, very brushstroke kind of inspired, or there's a nice flow to it. So yeah, really cool stuff. And I also feel like I usually see your stuff in black and white, so having a little splash of color here is like a nice change of pace from what I'm familiar with for your pieces. But yeah, I really like just the energy and the colors here. I like the little glow of sunlight hitting the back or like the edges of the trees for that rim lighting. So really, really great stuff here. Awesome piece. And the next person up is Den. So Den has not finished this piece, but I thought the line work was really, really cool. Hopefully you guys can see the line work in this piece, but I feel like the vision is here. You know, there's something going on, and I'm hoping that, you know, Den, you get a chance to finish coloring this piece, because I feel like there's a lot of potential with this. The creativity, the scope of it's really cool, so I'm very excited to see how this could turn out if you do decide to end up coloring it or rendering it. It could, you know, it could be black and white, and I think that might be, I think it'll be fine. And then the last piece is Zed is tired. Zed, you are here. Yeah, I gave you a shout out as well. So I know this is like a environmental challenge month for this month's submissions, but I think you know, I like that you incorporated some storytelling, some characters, and I feel like the lighting and the color scheme in this one turned out really, really nice. So yeah, really good job with just the tone of this piece. So again, thank you everybody for submitting your pieces for this month's art challenge. So again, just a reminder, if you don't know how to participate in this art challenge, you want to go onto our Discord and go to art challenges, and every month either Gia or Kevin will put an update as to like what our monthly challenges, and this month's was scenic sketches. So keep an eye out for the different challenges, and of course they last for about a month, so you guys still got, well, I guess for this month there's not too much time, but yeah, keep an eye out for the October challenge, and hopefully you guys get to participate in it, and then we'll give you a shout out in the community if you guys post some stuff. Yeah, so who knows, maybe you might get a little spotlight on YouTube. So again, thank you everybody for submitting. Don't have Discord. That's okay. It's okay. But, you know, if you do have Discord, then you can definitely join. But if not, that's totally fine. Okay, so on to the main kind of event. So our event today, if you guys haven't heard or didn't know, is that I'm going to be taking a look at the community submissions. So Kevin, I believe, had thrown out this kind of what is it, like submissions announcement on Discord a few weeks ago, asking for you guys to submit your characters, especially characters where you feel like, you know what, something's not quite there yet. I feel like maybe the shape design is a little bit off, or the shape language is a bit off, and you want a little bit of my critiques. Usually we save critiques for our members or for our class students, but today, this is your lucky day where you could potentially get my feedback, even though maybe you're not enrolled in any of our stuff. So if you get chosen, ooh, wow, you get some nice free advice. So I'll try to do my best to accommodate for both the styles of the artist, but also hopefully the direction and the general kind of approach and style that the artist is going for. But yeah, just I guess a little bit of like a preface or a little bit of a heads up there's so many different art styles out there. I draw in a very particular way. I have my own way of doing like character designs and line work. So whatever feedback I give, I would say, you know, take it with a grain of salt, because, you know, sometimes advice works really well for certain styles, and maybe it might not work so much for another style. But I feel like any kind of critique or feedback that is given, always kind of take it with an open mind and kind of consider how it could be implemented, or take into consideration the intent of the feedback, so that, you know, it's not so it's used as best as possible for your own design. But I think that this is my way of also just saying that there's so many art styles in there that it's always so cool to see how everybody draws, and it's always so cool to see the different approaches and styles that everybody has, and their own kind of approach to characters design that is out there. And over the years, I feel like it's so cool to just see the way things have evolved throughout the years. Because, you know, I feel like I grew up when everybody was super into anime and manga, and I definitely still think that it is, but I think things have kind of morphed and changed into a style that I would have never been able to predict that that is the direction that it would go in. But yeah, it's always kind of cool seeing what you guys are making now. Like, it's almost like a new generation, a new kind of group or pool of artists that is doing something different. So yeah. This is neat. Can anyone submit work? Yeah, anyone could have submitted pieces, but unfortunately the submissions are closed. So I would, again, let's say that join our Discord, because we usually do these every now and then. I believe Iggy and Gonzalo have one coming up as well. So join our Discord. Keep an eye out for the different opportunities that can that can show up. But yeah, okay, so actually, before we even go into the submissions, I did want to go over a few things, just so that you guys have an idea as to roughly where I'm coming from when it comes to maybe the feedback, or how I'm considering shape design to helping the submissions, or like the pieces that people have thrown out there. So if you guys don't know, this is a really quick, maybe let's say Spark Notes version of how you can consider or think about shape design. So shape design, and obviously we also have some videos talking about shape design and kind of going over these topics, but just to quickly go over it, what I'm going to be looking for is how these artists have incorporated kind of these three core shapes. Now, this is where we get into like the tricky business of character design, because style has a very big influence on how you use these three shapes. So this is how I like to generally think about it. There's kind of like a spectrum in cartoony and realistic. So cartoony would be things like SpongeBob, or I don't know, Powerpuff Girls, or you know, Adventure Time. Adventure Time. And then something realistic would fall closer to the lines of, let's say, like Final Fantasy. I'm just gonna say Final Fantasy VII, not because of any particular affiliation or love for Final Fantasy VII, but that's kind of like the first one that kind of pops into my mind. Then you have like Resident Evil, the series, you know, the franchise. I would even say that realistic could fall within like a lot of superhero genres, so like Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, Iron Man, like all those kind of things. I would say that they typically fall more in the realistic side. And so you can kind of see that style can fluctuate in either or directions, and depending on which side that you fall under, cartoony or realistic, will also determine how effective or how much you'll rely on shape design. So if you're more cartoony, I would say that it's easier to use circles, triangles, and squares, because the character shapes are more unrealistic. The expectation for the proportions and the size and dimensions are also a little bit looser, meaning you can really exaggerate and break the proportions of the characters to emphasize more of design and silhouette. So you're pushing more for creativity and like design. So something that's kind of a little bit more newer and maybe a little unconventional. But if you're relying more on realistic kind of character designs, then the circle, triangle, and square reliance is going to be lesser. So there still might be some shape design, but it might be just hinted at or included in bits and pieces here in the outfit, or maybe piece of the armor or pieces of the clothing or in the shoes, but it's going to be just subtly hinted at. So basically, if you're more cartoony, you're going to have more emphasis on shapes. And then if you're more realistic, then you'll have less emphasis on shapes. You can still use both. You can still use shapes for either or, but it's just kind of understanding that depending on your style, you're going to have certain limitations on how much you can rely on shapes. So if you think about it, Batman's kind of boxy. He's fairly square-like, but would I say that Batman's a literal square? Not really. Whereas SpongeBob definitely is absolutely a square, but does he follow conventional proportions and structure? Not really. He almost doesn't have any kind of realistic proportions or anatomy that you can apply to SpongeBob. So when I'm looking over these pieces and these submissions, the first thing that I usually kind of try to balance out is how cartoony or how realistic the artist is going for, and what's their kind of intent when they're designing their characters. If they're going for a more cartoonier approach, then I'm going to give them more critique or more feedback in terms of how they can implement shapes into their design. And then if their design is a little bit more realistic, then my advice is more going to be catered towards proportions and structure and more attention to detail, while also still kind of keeping an eye on how they can differentiate their character's design and their shape language. And this goes to the next part, which is some good advice in general for all of you when it comes to using the shape kind of approach to designing your characters. So shape design tips. Have a primary shape. So if you're, as an example, well, have a primary shape. So as an example, if my primary shape is the circle, then my secondary shapes are going to be the square and the triangle. So just because you're focusing only on circles doesn't mean that you can't use the square or the triangle shape. It just means that your emphasis and kind of like the shape that kind of determines most of your decisions when it comes to the design is going to rely more on the circle than the square and the triangle. But don't kind of mistaken the idea that you can't use squares or triangles at all. By mixing up your shapes, it's actually a really good way of keeping your character's design interesting. So let's say this is the first advice. The second advice is to mix shapes whenever possible. And mixing shapes is always a really, really good idea because, you know, it just keeps your character's silhouette and their shape and their form much more interesting than if it was only solely circular. But obviously this is going to be a little bit different depending on the character's design and the overall just shape. So it's not always going to be a straightforward answer as to like, can I only use circle or can I only use one shape? When do I mix them? How many shapes do I mix? That really comes down to how you like to draw and how you like to design your characters, but it's a good thing to keep in mind that you want a primary shape, and then, if possible, try to mix different shapes together. And then the third one is contrast. So this is a really big one. If you have a primary shape, contrast your shapes and sizes. So if you do have a primary shape, it's always a good idea to have the next following shape be of a different shape size. So let's say if the head was kind of circular, then maybe it might be a good idea to have the body be a really, really big triangle. And then maybe the following pieces underneath could be a really small circle. Again, this could be a character design. This could be a shape that matches the idea and the concept that you have. But it's always about a combination and fluctuation between one or the other. So we're starting with a circle, then you go to a triangle, and then you can always go back to the triangle. So we're mixing shapes, and we're also contrasting things by having different sizes. So I'm going through all of this, even though you're like, wait, this is not critiquing. Why are you not critiquing yet? The reason why I was like, you know what? I think this would be a good idea or a good thing to kind of go over so that when I do start giving critiques, we're all kind of in the same page, or at least you kind of have a good understanding as to why I'm giving a certain critique in a certain way for the different submissions. So these are just some good things to keep in mind when you guys are designing something. And this goes for everybody, not just the people I'm going to be critiquing, but yeah, I thought it'd be kind of nice to share some like headline or, you know, introductory tips beforehand. Okay, so that being said, finally to the main event. Now, as you can see, there were a lot of submissions. I believe there was a total, at least at the time when I was looking through them, there was a total of 24 submissions. And as you guys know, Jesse likes to harp on how you guys don't submit properly sometimes. But this time I would say, you know what? 95% of you guys actually submitted properly. There was only like a few who actually didn't submit anything, where either the drive link didn't work or there's this one person, I'm not going to say who, didn't submit anything, but they gave a paragraph saying that they will submit something, which I thought was kind of funny. But you know what? I would say majority of you, I didn't calculate, but let's just throw out a random number and just say 95% of you actually submitted your drawings properly. So at the very end of the stream, I will also give a shout out to everybody who submitted, even though I won't be going through everybody's pieces just because we're just not going to have enough time for it. But if we do have some extra time, maybe I'll take a look at some extra pieces that I had, like maybe some quick notes and comments for, but didn't feel like maybe there was enough content or not enough substance to give critiques for. With that being said, our first person here is this one. So this one's a really cool one. I thought the drawing and the character sheet provided here was really good. So let me just pull up real quickly the submission sheet so I know what to say. So this is submitted by someone by the name of Deer, and if you guys want to check them out, they have an Insta or YouTube channel actually by the name of Dearly Beloved. That's a nice name. Dearly Beloved. Beloved with 3 Ds on YouTube, and they also are on Tumblr, so that's kind of cool. And let's see, what did she say? She said, I feel like his hair doesn't work too well when imagined in a 3D space, and I'm not sure how to fix it. Okay, so that's like the first kind of comment, and actually that's a really good kind of maybe segue to get into this. So I was actually going to say, off the top of my head when I first saw this, is that the hair I feel like could be the standout aspect for this character. So everything about this character I think is like really, really cool. You got the expressions down. I like anytime you guys hand out any kind of backstory, I always think that that's really, really cool. But I would say sometimes backstory, and this is not a critique by the way, but it's more of like the backstory and the design should balance each other out. Sometimes we get so caught up and so locked in with like coming up with a backstory that the backstory could be really, really cool, but the design doesn't really match the backstory, or certain design decisions were made because the backstory says that it should be there, but then it doesn't really work for the design. So when you guys are coming up with your character cards and your backstories and the designs, make sure that it's balanced and that it makes sense as to why you're adding certain design details, as well as like why those, I don't know, backstory traits are leaking into the design of your character. But that's not to say that that is why I'm saying that for this character. In general, I think this character turned out really, really well. I like the outfit. I like the drawing style of it. Maybe my like one minor thing is like the outfit and the shirt and the face has a good amount of detail to it. There's a good amount of folds and lines and kind of depth to it. But I feel like maybe a little bit more could have been put into the shoes as well. So maybe some indication of like design for the shoes. And it doesn't have to be a lot either. I know I'm the shoe guy, of course, that's like the first thing that I say. But it could be really small stuff like just adding that little kind of curve here on the shoe, like at the heel would be kind of nice. These look like Converses, and so like I don't know, maybe having just even like some stitching lines at the bottom would be a nice little bit of detail that's not too heavy, but just enough to add just a little bit of nuance back into the drawing. And then obviously when it comes to shoes, I do think that it's a good idea to maybe add like how the shoe is kind of stitched together. Again, I get it, shoes can be complicated and they can be quite a lot, but just having these minor little bits of details kind of tie in the details back to how the overall drawing looks like. But shoes are usually, I feel like for most people, kind of like the last thing people end up kind of paying attention to. But hopefully, if you're going to spend this amount of detail and time and care into the whole entire drawing, I think that it's always a good idea to also consider how the shoe might turn out. So yeah, but the first thing that did pop into my mind was like the hair. Now, disregarding kind of the comment that like the hair doesn't feel quite right, I think the drawing of the hair is really cool, and the colors and the shadow and the shading that turned out in the hair turned out really, really good. My kind of small bit of advice is, or the one thing that I'm noticing is that if you feel like your character is not standing out too much, especially because the design is a little bit more straightforward and standard, then I would say find one piece or element about the clothing that you think you can kind of exaggerate just a little bit. So again, this goes back to that whole spectrum of cartoony and realistic. Now, I would say that not most people don't land exactly on the extreme of cartoony or in the extreme of realistic when it comes to character design. We kind of fall somewhere in the middle, but we lean one way or the other. So I would say that I'm a more realistic character designer, but I lean somewhere in the middle, but leaning more towards the realistic side. So for you, I would say that you lean somewhere right in the middle, but I would say you favor the realistic side just a little bit. And because of that, I would try to just find like one element that you want to kind of exaggerate, or maybe not exaggerate, but draw attention to. So find one element you can draw the viewer's attention to. So in this case, I feel like that's the hair. Everything else is fairly standard. You know, you got like pretty straight, what looks like khakis kind of pants, and then you got the long sleeve dress shirt, which is roughly kind of baggy, but like not too baggy. And then you got this nice, really cool short sleeve sweater, it looks like, or a really deep V-neck shirt with that kind of goes over the shirt. So everything is fairly kind of toned down, and I feel like the hair could be emphasized just a little bit more. But again, this is why it's like a really subtle, small thing, and I wouldn't really push it too much. But maybe I would just make the hair just stand out a little bit more. Like have it come out just a little bit further. And I really like these extra nuances that you have here, like the hair piece coming out, this upper piece of the hair kind of flashing out. And I would maybe play around a little bit more with that and maybe just emphasize it a bit more. Now, obviously, just because I'm saying that you should exaggerate it and push it more, it doesn't mean that you have to go over the top or really go, you know, super like large and crazy big hair, but kind of find a good middle ground where you can push it a little bit more, but not too much. And actually, when I saw your character, the first thing that kind of came to mind was 16, the show. And I feel like 16, the show, also does a really good job of keeping relatively kind of characters that look relatively average, but giving every character just a little bit of some standout element, like whether it's in their clothing or in their hair or a little quirk that they do with their expression or their face. So that could be something that you can consider as well for your character. But and maybe it's the cat ear headphones, but like maybe that's the standout aspect of it. So I already think this is like coming out along really, really well. But let's see. Let's go back to it. Let's see. Oh, you're so in this case, the problem is more of you don't know if the hair works too well in a three-dimensional space. Now, let's see. So for your hair, it looks really, really good from like the 3/4 angle, or especially this more standard 3/4 angle. And I think maybe what's a little bit kind of lacking in like this one could be just the volume in the front. So I would maybe just add a little bit of that volume back over here. And this is where your design decisions is gonna have to kind of kick in, because your hair over here on the left might actually cut into the headphones. And so it'll really be up to you as to whether you want it to cut over on top of your headphones or not, because there's a lot of volume and puffiness that happens on this angle that doesn't really come through in here. And I feel like the kind of like these nice little quirks like the hair and like the rounded puffiness, it gets a little bit lost in this more expressive angle. And you know what, this is totally normal. Usually when we're doing more expressive angles and faces, we kind of get so caught up on the structure and the technicalities of how a face should look that when we finally get to the fun parts, or the quote-unquote fun parts of the face, we're already really stiff, and we're really a little bit like not too we've lost a little bit of the mojo and the confidence in it because we're like stressing so much on the face. So in those cases, I always kind of say to people or students to, just take a step back, take a quick little break. Maybe look at something else to almost like cleanse your palate, so to speak. So your brain is kind of refreshed, is a little bit refreshed and has a new kind of like a reset in terms of the perspective of how you should approach your drawing. So I feel like you're on the right track here, but it's like the same thing over here, is that I would say that the upper back half of your hair is reaching over a little bit, and I would push it back. Maybe the headphones should be a little bit further, and then this front half is what should be sticking out a little bit more. At least so that it matches how it is here. Because you got this nice, almost helmet-like structure at the front of the hair that's nice and simplified, but has enough characteristic in the design that I would try to maintain this almost like rectangular box helmet-like hair shape. And I feel like it's getting a little bit lost here. So I would just extend it back out a little bit and have it come forward, and then I would also push back this part of the hair so it's not sticking up too much, but it can stick up back here like you had it beforehand. So something like that. And again, this is where you're gonna have to make that decision as like, how much of the headphones do I want to show, and how much of it am I okay with covering it? And that's going to be your kind of creative decision, and that tug of war and pulling back and forth decision making that you're going to have as like, how much of the headphones do I want to show, and or do I want to emphasize the hair more? So that's really just going to come down to you personally on what you want to do. So find one element that you can draw the viewer's attention to, and then I would say kind of have a primary element for the head. So it's going to come down to the hair versus the headphones. And if you're kind of like, oh, well, is there another example of this? This would be the classic example of Mickey Mouse. So if you guys didn't know, Mickey Mouse has that, the standard like 2 ears on the front when you look at Mickey Mouse. Okay, I know that's not what Mickey Mouse looks like, but from the side angle, Mickey Mouse, you still see the ears on the side. So this was like a design, like an intentional design choice that one of the animators made very, very early on. But this logistically doesn't make sense, but it was a design creative decision that they made so that it works better for the aesthetics of Mickey Mouse's character design overall. And this is kind of like, not exactly the same, but it's kind of similar, where you have the overall structure of the hair mapped out, but now you're running into kind of technical issues. And I would say this is when you need to rely more on the design factor of your character and how do you want to maintain it. But those are all kind of decisions that you have to kind of work out and do some experimentation on. Definitely don't give up on trying things out, having a trial and error aspect to it, and seeing what works and seeing what doesn't. Let's see. I didn't have a chance to read too much of a chat, but let's see. All I saw is Kevin wanting to tell people to ring the bell. So yeah, I guess, if you guys are enjoying the stream, remember to ring the bell and to also like the stream and also subscribe so if you get notified of when we go live. Oh, this is a good question. Maybe if one of the designs, if this comes up, maybe I'll answer it. But the question is, Indigo asks, "Hey Josh, for this critique, you're keeping things simple for this character, but I also hear a lot that it's best to do funky shapes to make your silhouette stand out. So how do you balance that?" So again, yeah, that goes back to the very first thing that I brought up over here. So depending on your style, if you're more cartoony, then I would say you want to lean more into the shapes and coming up with like interesting silhouettes and using funky shape combinations. But if your style is more realistic, so for example, I lean more into the realistic side of things, then maybe you can rein it in or tone it down a little bit, because it kind of gets into that uncanny valley section of design. But it really comes down to how you want to make things kind of work. And maybe I would say is, in order to balance your silhouette with funky shapes, so to speak, it comes down to the legibility of your character. So, for SpongeBob, let's say the square shape, that's kind of like the standout shape. It's the square element of it. So if you don't want that square element to be lost, you don't want to add any extra things like hair or maybe some like funky shapes in the outfits that stands out and breaks that square shape. The reason why SpongeBob stands out so well or is such an iconic character design is because it's really just a clean square or rectangle shape in its designs. But it really comes down to what you want and the approach that you're going for, because not all cartoony designs are super simple or super straightforward, but it really comes down to your own style and your own approach that you're going for. But yeah, shapes are there to help make things memorable, but I always think every case is a case-by-case scenario where you can't just kind of go like, oh, well, it's gonna be super simple, so I gotta have like the most iconic shape. Sometimes it's backed up by things like, what is your intention? What is your style? What is the character's kind of characteristics? What is the backstory that might help drive and make your decisions when you're designing the character? But there's a lot of things other than just going like, oh, I want an iconic design. But iconic design is almost more of like the byproduct of putting in the work of doing like research and doing some idea drafts or looking for inspirations and like shapes and objects in the real world and seeing if you can incorporate that into your own character's design. But with that being said, I know that you got some more questions, but we got a lot to go through, so I'll maybe answer it if I have a little bit more time. But we're gonna move on to the next person, and that is by Rye or Ree. Let's see. So this is their submission, and this is Ree or Rye again. Sorry if I'm butchering it. Let's see. On Instagram, they go by, I'm just gonna write it here. It's a Doodle with Re. Oops. I don't know if the capitalization matters, but yeah, this is their handle on Instagram, and on TikTok it's the same thing, or Twitch, I guess, is the same thing with underscores in between each word. But let's see, what did they say? They said, my character Ordnance is an artificially created life form designed as a one-person army, a weapon of war. I recently designed... Oh, there's a long list. Okay, I'm going to try to read out as much as I can. I recently redesigned Ordnance to be insect-based. Its head is inspired by a dragon-headed caterpillar. It has dragonfly-like legs, mantis-like claws, a second smaller pair of arms, a long tail, and cordyceps-like spines on its back that can release spores or pollen. It can also materialize dragonfly wings on its back. A unique feature is that it can swap its claws for any items from weapons to utensils. Ordnance's color palette is primarily blue-gray with a royal blue-purple gradient at the leg ends, horns and cyan accents for its eyes. Let's see, it's a mix of Wally's gentle personality, curiosity, demeanor with the programmed obedience of a war machine, and a touch of the Iron Giant's quiet heroism. So, thinking Mewtwo and Stitch, Shadow the Hedgehog in a Cybug-like body. Okay. And you say you changed the design drastically, leaning into its insect trait because the insects are naturally strong and resilient. I'm just gonna skim through it really quickly. Okay, cool. So you basically want to try to balance, or what they're saying is they want to balance between formidability but also the innocence. So it's like the strength balance with the innocence and also gentleness, which is a really, really tricky one. But thank you for your submission, Ree. And also thank you, was it Deer? Thank you for your submission. I don't think I said thank you, but thank you for submitting. And this is Ordnance's piece. So the reason why I picked this one is because I feel like, again, there's a really cool and good potential with this one. I think there's a lot that's really working well with it. I really like the head shape. I like all the ideas behind this one, and I think this is a good example of one where there's a lot of backstory. Oh, that's true. Yeah, Toothless is kind of like this. There's a lot of backstory and a lot of kind of ideas working behind the scenes, but you're trying to also make sure that you're working those kind of backstory elements and traits into the design and trying to find a balance with it. And I would say that maybe a good way to test whether this works or not is to show it to someone who you've never explained your character to. Try to see if they can understand who this character is. Now, whoever you decide to show this to, they're not going to understand your character to 100% right off the bat. They're not going to be able to check off every single of your descriptions that you had. But as long as they get a rough idea as to what you're going for, then I would say then you would have had a successful design. But if they're way off the mark, then you might have to readjust some things. And I think that's kind of the case here, is that you might have a lot of things kind of running in the back of your mind, but in terms of the design, but kind of maybe rein it back a little bit. Maybe go back and see if you can describe or explain the character's traits in fewer words. Maybe there's a few less things, or maybe at least pick out some words or descriptions that are kind of like the main ones that you want to go for. And I would say the main one you were kind of aiming for is someone who's like super strong and formidable, but also kind of kind and innocent. And I would say that I think you got the kind and innocent part down, but there's a lot of, I know in your description, there was a lot of kind of terms or things you were saying about like, oh, the weapons, and then this is why the arms are like this, and this is why the back is like this. That, I feel like that might not read necessarily too clearly in the design. So I think what's working is the head shape and the way the body is curling. Actually, wait, this one over here works much better. Actually, the one over here, the child one, looks really good. There's almost kind of like a hidden form or shape in this child version that you have here. So maybe, let's see. What I would maybe rework is like you got a good kind of grasp on the head shape right now. And I would say like maintain the shape that you have for the head. But maybe see if you can rework the silhouette and the shape of the body. So you got these really cool, I don't know, let's say horns. I know they're not, maybe not horns, but let's say they're these horns that are coming off the head over here. But I would rework maybe how the body comes out. So the reason why I feel like the child design over here, or even this one, stands out a lot more is because there's a lot of detail and noise that gets lost in the form and the silhouette of the character's piece. So what I would do, even if you're kind of going for a slightly not realistic, but very well reasoned out design for your character, see if you can find ways to make the elements stand out. So if you like these hair pieces that stand out, maybe a good idea is to make it really, really big and puffy at the beginning, and then it slowly starts tapering down as it gets closer and closer to the back, so that the hair pieces stand out a lot near the front and near the beginning. And then as this starts coming down towards the body, it tapers in, kind of like a hedgehog. Like the different needles that are there are not all the same sizes and shapes. They kind of taper off, and they're slightly different as they're moving on. And then the legs are really cool. I feel like there's almost like a chinchilla or almost like a hedgehog style or kind of shape language going on with this character. And I kind of almost want all the different components of the character or the creature to almost be like huddled in. Like I want almost everything to be like hunched over and everything. Or maybe, yeah. Maybe like it's very like huddled over. It looks like you got 6 arms. Maybe this one's really close to the face, and then these ones are like the main standing ones, and then you have the long tail to help guide it. So I'm not too sure what exactly separates the child version from the adult version other than it's being longer, but I actually think you have more going on, or there's more success with the child version. And if the only difference between the child and the full-grown adult version is that it's slightly bigger, then I don't think, maybe that's not too big of a thing to kind of get stuck on, let's just say. I think you can maybe make the tail like as you have it here, like it could be a little bit thicker, maybe it's a bit bigger. Maybe there's certain parts of the tail that still have parts of the spikes that stick out, and then the tail end is like bigger but has again elements of these spots there. I think the whole rounded head shape and the much more rounder body already gives that much more friendlier aspect of it. But then if you want that still like formidable foe, it's like, I don't know, maybe it's like in the hands, kind of like what you have here, like the sharp claws already kind of hammer that in, or you have like a bigger, larger back. So maybe let's go for another approach, but you got like a bigger head, or like the bigger horns, and then you have like the head over here. I would say like you can play around with like the stance, the pose, you can play around with the way the posture of the creature is like. Something more huddled and hunched over gives it a more timid, friendlier vibe, whereas something that kind of skulks and looms over, I would say has a bit more of a menacing kind of feel to them. So if you're like, oh no, Josh, the way that you have it over here is a little bit too friendly, it's a bit too kid-like, then maybe change the posture like kind of how you have it here. But I would play around with the dimensions of like the fur part over here. Like, it's a bit too uniform in the way it spreads down, and I would play around maybe with the way the character or the creature stands and everything. Also, this more hunched over hand posture makes the character generally just feel more timid. So think more about like how these creatures would stand. You can also kind of consider like looking into and doing research of different animals and creatures and grabbing different ways that they're kind of standing. So maybe as an example, was it this year that I did it? It is this year. As an example, going back, this is from one of our streams way back in February. So if you want to watch this, there is a VOD of it if you want to catch it again. But this one I combined a gorilla with the bat. So in order to kind of figure out the design of this creature, I had to find poses of like how bats move and how they stand and how they work. But I also had to look up references of gorillas and look up maybe references of monkeys and primates to see just like how does the fur develop, how do they stand, what makes them intimidating, what makes them kind of have a larger than life presence to them. And all that stuff comes down in the research process. And you can kind of see this is what I'm doing here is similar to what I'm kind of advising for your character, which is a small head, but then the body and the fur kind of wraps around, gets higher near the top, gets higher around the top, and then it tapers around the waist. So then the hair still stands out, but it like kind of comes back in. So there's a contrast in form. It goes small with the head, large with the body, and then back to small in the waist. And the head is very triangular, the body is much more square and circular-like, and then the torso and the waist is much more triangular-like. So it goes back to the very thing that I said in the beginning of contrasting shapes and forms and sizes to make things interesting. Because I think the biggest thing that kind of stands out to me as to what's not working is that everything feels very uniform in its proportions. So a little bit too uniform. So I would change that. And I would do research on different animal poses. Find one that kind of matches or captures what you're going for. And I would always encourage, look past the animal that you're using. So I don't know what kind of animals you're kind of using as reference, but you know, you can look at bears, you can look at wolves, foxes, see what they look like when they're on the prowl, when they're on their predator kind of hunting mode, because that might give you some ideas as to how you can draw this creature when it's hunting, when it's supposed to be dangerous. Or you can look up insects. Different insects might have different stances. I know you said praying mantis is one, so I would definitely lean more into the praying mantis. But the reason why praying mantis stands out is because they're very thin and they're very stick-like, so you see every component and element of their design. Whereas with something like this, where it's very bulky, there's a lot of detail, there's a lot of noise happening with the hands and the fur and the head, it's actually harder to discern or see the stance that comes from the praying mantis. So research more animal stances. And I would also kind of rein in the visual noise. So that's kind of like the big one that I see here, is like there's no discernible kind of shape that's there. So that's why I was like, oh, I really like the child direction that you went here. So I actually think you're really, really close in this one. But when it gets to its adult form, I think it loses a little bit of that kind of the flow that's in the shape of the body. Okay, so hopefully that helps. Hopefully that makes some sense. But yeah, let's see. Yeah, the owl lady from the owl house. Batrilla. Oh, that's a good name, yeah. Deep water creature vibes, but its illuminated parts I fear makes it not well liked by other dark fellas. Anyone have any questions? Oh, sure, yeah, if anybody has questions, feel free to chime in. Let's see. I know that you had another question, Indigo. Hopefully Kevin answered it. So the question was, There's also a style where you mix the exaggeration of, say, caricature with realism, or that if your character design is simple, then present them in a pose that is dynamic and interesting. It's all very intricate. That's hard for beginners to handle. Yeah, that's very true. I would say a really good quick exercise, and again, it really depends on what direction you come from. But believe it or not, some of the best cartoonists and some of the best character designers that don't draw realistically, the reason why they're able to draw really realistically or cartoony is because they have a very realistic skill set. Most artists who draw cartoony are also really, really good at painting realistically, are really good at still life, and are really, really good at understanding the general proportions of like people and the faces. And the reason why is because when you train yourself in like real life and still life practices and proportions and anatomy studies, it actually sharpens your observation skills, and it sharpens your ability to observe something and simplify it and turn it into something different, so to speak. And cartooning at its very core is that. Cartooning, if you're people who are really good at cartooning are really good at observing and finding interesting and unique shapes from the everyday life objects that they have in front of them, whether it's a watch, scissors, a mug, or I don't know, like a pencil sharpener or something. They're able to look at the shape and be like, oh, that would be a cool head shape, or that would be a really cool dress. And part of that skill is observation. And so there's not a real like kind of be all end all formula or equation on how to simplify something, or how do you come up with a unique and interesting silhouette, because it's not as straightforward or of a beeline answer of like, oh, make it more simpler and rely on shapes. That's part of the answer, but a big part of it always ends up going back to being good at observing and being good at breaking things down into simple forms, and in order to expand off of those simple forms. And one of the best ways to practice that and learn that skill is to do studies and do kind of observational studies. But hopefully that gives you like a new direction and perspective on why still life studies or practicing sketches or figure drawing or painting is really good, because I think a lot of cartooning beginners kind of skip out on that part. I definitely skipped out on that part. I thought, I want to draw manga, so I'm just going to jump right into designing characters, but completely neglecting anatomy and proportions just to draw something cool, but learn the really long and kind of, I guess, drawn out way that it's required. But yeah, let's see. What did Kevin say? Kevin replied with, it's realistic in that it's built in realistic proportions as opposed to highly stylized proportions, but it bends the rules because it can. Yeah, a lot of it really is learning about where you can bend the rules and how to bend the rules, but it does ultimately come down to knowing where those rules come from. And again, it goes back to still life studies and learning how to draw things like realistically in order to know how to bend the rules. Okay, cool. So thank you, Ree, for your submission. We're gonna go on to the next person, and that is Bob. So Bob, let's see, what did Bob say? You are number 11, and you wrote, oh, so again, yeah, this is Bob, and before I read what he had to say, you can find Bop on YouTube. Bop Universe. Bop Universe. Let's see, I missed it. The Bop was a number. There was like a number with it. Bop Universe 1947. That's a cool name. Okay, so you said, this is how I visualize myself as a cartoon character, I guess. Find it hard to draw my character from more than one angle, or to even try cases where my character's complete shoes can be seen. Oh, okay. I usually hide the top part by drawing pants over them. Also, just eye shapes, semi-oval eye circles. Eyes brown, curly hair, since I still struggle with hair as a whole. Okay. Well, Bob, thank you for submitting. Um, Maybe before I go into uh, what you had to say about your submissions, I'm actually gonna say kind of my first thoughts when I saw this, which is that I really feel like, you know, if you continue working on this and if you keep sharpening your skills, I feel like you can have a really, really good kind of result with this one. Uh, but the first thing that kind of stands out is that for this one, this is a really good example of pushing the proportions and pushing different elements. So right now, everything is kind of evenly distributed in terms of its shapes and proportions. Now I'm generously kind of dividing them up. So I know that they're not obviously like perfectly equal, but if I were to kind of look at the overall distribution of the proportions, they're relatively even. And so if you ever look at any other kind of cartoon kind of designs that really push proportions, like Powerpuff Girls or Dexter's Dexter's Laboratory or Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends, or even Codename Kids Next Door, you'll notice that they're always trying to find one part of the body and trying to make that way, way, way bigger than what it would normally would be. And I feel like the go-to one is usually the head. So I'm just gonna write here a little bit too uniform. Proportions are a little too evenly distributed. And so what I would do is, this is a really good example of when you can play around with silhouette. So here you got kind of like a big head shape. And this goes for anybody too. When you're designing a character and you are leaning more in the cartoony side of things, I'd say really take it upon yourself to see what are some like interesting shapes that you can create. So we got a head shape that's very square-like. Really like that. Reminds me a little bit of like Scott Pilgrim, and I always love design element and shape from Scott Pilgrim. One thing that I was thinking that you could push more is like the hat. So you're wearing like a toque, as we Canadians say. If you're American, I guess you'd be saying it as like a beanie. Now I'm really, really pushing it. Maybe you're like, nah, I don't want to push it that much, but I would say give it a shot first. The great thing about cartooning is that the world's almost kind of your oyster to a certain extent, meaning that you can really, really push things, and you really won't know whether or not it works until you push it. There's a really great interview with Gendy Tartovsky where he's talking about the design choices that they had to make with the girl character from Dexter's Laboratory. I forgot what that girl's name is, but the ballerina girl that's like obsessed with Dexter. And they kept designing her over and over again, but it just wasn't working out. Dee Dee, yeah, thank you, Hidden Tides. But yeah, they were trying to figure out Dee Dee's design, and they kept kind of leaning into a more not realistic, but a bit more properly proportioned character design. And what they noticed is that they had to really break, quote unquote, her proportions for it to kind of work. And what they ended up doing is like they had to make her head really, really abnormally large, and then her body really, really tiny and small to capture almost that style that they were already going for when doing Dexter's Laboratory. So the same thing I feel like could be applied, the same kind of philosophy or theory can be applied to your drawing over here, Bob, where, just go for it, kind of see how much you can break of the character's design and whether or not it works. Because you really won't know until you like really go for it and exaggerate the forms. So I'm just gonna kind of do it really quickly for you, but I would encourage you to give this a shot on your own time and see how far you can push it. Now, what I've kind of noticed is that you got a really big head here, then you got a section here for your hoodie, and we're going to try to make it stand out and noticeable. And then what I'm going to do is make the body really small, but I'm going to have this part of the arm come out in that kind of 90-degree angle so it works with your silhouette. And then maybe I'd tuck the cuff in for the design, and I would taper it kind of like how you have it already, but I would strengthen the shape of that taper. So what I'm tapering in is the cuff, the waist cuff that's there, making it much more obvious, almost like this trapezoid shape. And then this way, hopefully your shoes are able to stand out more. And then maybe what I would do is flare these out even more. Or have these connect. I guess you can have them connect if you want. But I would really just kind of look at some inspirations of yours, if you have any. Off the top of my head, this reminds me a little bit of like Sonic, kind of like the old school Sonic cover designs where Sonic's shoes are huge. I would look at like Scott Pilgrim is a really good one. Astro Boy is a good one. And just taking a look at different kind of properties that really experimented with shape design and proportions. Whoops. And this way you can really see how you can get it a little bit more playful. So what I did is I redistributed the head size. Excuse me. Made the head a little bit bigger. Honestly, I think the head could be even bigger. Then the body, I made it a little bit quote-unquote small. And then I made the feet large like the head. So instead of having it be even, so it's almost kind of like medium, 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 it's now large, small, large. And like I said, I think I could make the body or the head even larger. So let's kind of go with that. And this way the head really takes up most of the attention and most of the kind of the weight, the quote-unquote design weight. So usually a lot of times when character designers use the word or the term weight, they're not necessarily referring to the weight of the character, but more of like the proportion distribution weight. So in this case, the head takes up most of the weight of the character, and the body is just taking up a small amount. I might actually kind of taper the body in even more, so, and push it up so that we have a little bit more of some more space and gap. So now the head's really, really big, and then the body is really, really small, like up to here now. Or small in comparison to the rest of the body. And then now the legs are like, yeah, the legs are like here. So now it's more interesting in terms of the weight distribution, and it makes it a little bit more interesting. Now, I'm not saying that this is like the kind of the answer that I'm saying like, oh, it's got to be like this, but I'm giving you hopefully an idea as to how you can experiment and change things up and kind of break the rules in a way so that you have a little bit more, hopefully, sense of freedom to experiment and try things out. But weight distribution and proportion distribution is like a really big thing to experiment around with, especially when you're designing more cartoonier characters. And yeah, I feel like the proportions and how you distributed these things is one of those like big things that you can experiment with. If anything else, if you're like, nah, Josh, I don't want to do this. This is a little bit too cartoony. It's a little bit more, a little bit too kind of, I don't know, a little bit too much. It's not your cup of tea, which is totally fine. I would definitely still encourage to kind of expand the hat size and maybe have this part come out a little bit more. That little kind of tip that comes off of like toques or beanies sometimes, I would definitely push that out a little bit more. And so it stands out, and then I would, it sounds odd, or no, I guess it doesn't really sound that odd. I would actually make your shoes a little bit bigger. I actually don't know if I copied it incorrectly, because I have your evil version overlapping the nice version, But I would, yeah, have the shoes just be a little bit bigger, and then I would push the sweater just a little bit higher, just so that the distribution, weight distribution, and proportion distribution's a little bit more broken up a bit. And then, yeah, this could be the collar. Cuff could be like here, something like that. So it's just changed up and shifted around just a little bit more. But I really like this. I think this is like a really, like, there's a interesting kind of approach or design aesthetic that's already happening here. But I think a good direction to take it in is really just to kind of experiment. Experiment is like the name of the game when it comes to a more cartoonier style. Whereas when it comes to realism, I guess you could say the name of the game is in the aesthetics of it. Both the worst or best thing for the silhouette. Yeah, I mean, you know, that's silhouettes is like it's not a tool that is going to solve everything. But a silhouette is a really quick way to see roughly what's working for your character and what's not working. So again, Indigo, I know that you brought up a statement or question about silhouettes. Silhouettes, again, I think a lot of people get so caught up on it because it's such a known trick or a known feature with iconic character designs where everybody goes like, oh, I gotta have the most iconic silhouettes ever. And I think what ends up getting lost is everybody gets more or too focused on the silhouettes before the design. And I think people end up kind of feeling like silhouettes is the I don't know, the be-all, end-all solution in figuring out whether their design works or not. But I think people don't realize that a silhouette is just a tool. It's just a good way to check whether your character's design is working or not. And it's a really good way to just check whether things are clear and legible in your character's design, especially if you feel like things are getting too busy or things are getting lost in the design. So a silhouette is not actually really, well, it can be, but I wouldn't say that it's a good idea to overly rely on a silhouette to make sure that your design is working. But yeah, Bob, hopefully this gives you some things to kind of mull over. But yeah, we're gonna move on to the next one. Oh, actually, let me see. Also, like, wait, before we move on to the next one, actually, I know for Bob, you said you had something about like the shoes. The shoes are okay. I know that the pants, you were saying that you have an over reliance on the shoes kind of being, you know, overlapped or covered up by the pants. But I think like that's totally fine unless your character has like pants that are perfectly cropped right there. What I would say, or like right above your shoes, what I would say is like to have like show a little bit of ankle maybe. And then for shoes, for a shoe design that you have here, it's always about this little dip right here, this kind of almost S curve that's there. And then you have your shoe, and then this is the tongue flap, and then you got the big, let's say this is your shoe shape size. Then it would be like this, something like that. This is how I would maybe approach your shoe design if you were to like flash the ankles or something like that. But having the pants drape over the shoes or flowing over it is totally normal. It's totally fine. But if you are worried about it, a quick like thing I would highly recommend for anybody drawing shoes is this part. It's this curve that happens right there. It adds a lot of dimensionality to your shoes. Unless the person is wearing boots, or like those kind of Bluntstones type boots where they wrap around the foot. Unless your character is wearing shoes like that, I would highly recommend not drawing or designing shoes in this way, but instead to include that little dip. At least here. You don't even have to add the laces or the tongue flap, whatever design inside of the shoe. All you need is this almost S flow that happens to represent the tongue flap and then also this divot here. Because what it does is that it kind of trains your eye to see the center of the shoe, and then how the center of the shoe is kind of flowing from the tongue flap all the way around here. And then it also kind of shows you how the side of the ankle then gets covered up by the side part of the shoe, and then how it starts coming over this way. So that's my kind of tip for shoes, especially at the 3/4 angle. That this right here, that flow right there, is super, super important. And if you're drawing it from the front a little bit more, I'll go back to the green. I feel like the green was a nice color. Again, it's still there. It just might be like much, much thinner and pushed in. So it might be something closer to like this. So then the red color would be here. And then that would be your... And then maybe, I guess, like the sole of the shoe would be like here. And then your foot would be here. And then the pants would be like here. Honestly, when it comes to cartooning, it's more just like the lack of detail. So like I personally never draw shoes like this because it's too little detail. But if your style is more cartoony, and this goes for anybody, it's more just the lack of detail. So if you're finding that you draw in a more cartoonier style, then it could just be that you have a lack of shoelaces. Don't put too much crease lines or stitch lines in the shoes. Don't worry about the folds in the pants or in the socks or the heel indication over there. Just try to simplify the forms as best as you can, and it'll already look very cartoony. Okay, so hopefully, Bob, that helps you out. And everything else, honestly, I think works really, really well. I know you mentioned the eyes, but I think the eyes look really good. And I know you mentioned curls for the hair, but I don't know. There's not really too much hair showing up in your drawing, so I guess if you want to include it, I would just, again, experiment with it, see how you can like kind of frame the face with your hair, the hair's design. Okay, and then the next one. Actually, I'm going to take a drink of water before we move on. Of course, I end up talking about shoes. Yeah. Hey, I don't love shoes. I love drawing shoes. Too little detail. I mean, depends on your style, but that's kind of what separates cartoony from realistic, is actually the level of detail. Okay, let's see. Next one is 16 and it is by Larry. Let me see if I can find Larry. Okay, this is by Larry, and this is her design over here, and let's see what she says. She says, so I made a redesign for an outfit for one of my main OCs a while ago, and while I'm a big fan of how it turned out, due to my somewhat jittery lines and regular ball mentality, I'm struggling to get a good grip on consistent shape design. In the reference file, she has a front-facing pose along with a full block reference for the silhouette. And I want to improve it with some clearer shape language. For context, these are just pirate outfits. It's like the big celebration of the town's culture. In the files, there's also some regular outfits she wears, but just for reference. Oh, okay. Whoops, what the... Oh, okay. Oh, whoops. Shifted some things over. Is that gonna realign my workspace? Alright. Let's see. Okay, bye Shadow Bean. Hopefully you have a good night. Let's see. Okay. So this one, I picked this one because I feel like there's some really cool things working out for it. It also seems like there's I don't know if this was worked on at like different times or like over the course of like multiple years, because I really like this one. I feel like this one almost feels like a completely different skill level or at a skill development level stage compared to the other ones. Like the line work is different, the way the face is drawn is a little bit different. Even the coloring approach is a little bit different from this one. I guess it's because there's a little bit more lighting and rendering in the pants and in the arms and in the body. But I guess maybe it's because this one's a bit more of like an illustrative take versus the other ones, which is a bit more like straightforward character design. But overall, I really like it. I think it's the advice I would have is very similar to the one that we had at the very beginning with, like, let's say with this one, where it's really just coming down to finding one particular standout element for your character and kind of leaning into it just a little bit more maybe. But yeah, I feel like it's just kind of leaning into a little bit more. So I think the hair is a lot of fun, and I think like the horn, or I don't know what I'm assuming they're horns. I would lean into that a little bit more. Oh, it's like a bandana with teeth on it. I just realized. Okay, well, whatever it is, that headpiece that you have, I would just lean into it a little bit more. But again, this is personal take, or what my kind of take on it would be. But I would take the hair and I would push this out a little bit more, just so that it stands out. So again, for cartoonier designs and a cartoonier style, and I would put this under the more cartoonier approach, stuff like this, I feel like it helps to kind of have these counterbalancing elements that are like larger. So for the hair, I would make it this big, maybe just like a little bit bigger, so it stands out. And let's just outline it real quick. And or maybe if that's too much, that's totally fine. But then the ears look really cool, so part of me is just like, I want to make the ears or these horns just a tad bit bigger. I don't know, but again, it's kind of like well, I'm just really kind of seeing if it works or not. Maybe it just does not work at all, and that's totally fine. But I don't know, something to counterbalance the shape. So you'll notice that I'm kind of using how you have it already, where I'm taking this one and I'm countering it with how the hair is over here. They almost feel like they're countering. They're almost like countering elements that are there, and I feel like it's really cool. It's like a really cool element of your character's design, and I feel like I would lean into it. If that's not your cup of tea, which I think is totally fine, I would maybe at least increase the size of the ponytail that's here, maybe. So like this is a really cool standout component of the hair, and I feel like I would just make that stand out more. Maybe even have it come through at the back. You can see a little bit of it there. I'm trying to find a black color to outline. So it's like one or three. I'm just kind of seeing like what are some things you could play around with. The hand though and the feet and the outfit look really cool. I like them. I know that this is like the quote unquote pirate outfit. I think this looks like that's the pirate outfit. Also the robot arm. I know it's longer, and this seems really obvious because you can really clearly see it in the silhouette. I am wondering if it would be good to take the robot arm and just make it a little bit larger than what it actually is, so that there's almost like it's obvious that it's supposed to be of a different proportion, just so that like when people see it, it doesn't feel too much like oh, one arm's longer than the other. It almost feels a little bit like a proportion mistake. Oh, hey, Larry. Glad you're able to make it. Or, yeah. Well, is it horns under the bandana? Oh, okay. But yeah, I'm just thinking like you can either experiment. I know that you just joined us, but what I just said is that I feel like you could, see if you like it or not, experiment with like the hair shapes. I would make them a little bit larger just because they're like really cool standout elements of your character's design. And I'm wondering if you'd ever want to like make the horns a little bit bigger or make those like hair pieces at the bottom a little bit bigger so it like kind of frames the face or it kind of stands out a little bit more. But I don't know, it's not really necessarily like a thing you have to have. If you don't want that though, I was suggesting that you can make the ponytail hair a bit bigger. Maybe it could even be a braid. I don't know, like braided hair that's there, or it's tied up a bit higher so it's more of like a sharper piece at the top. Could be another thing, something to just make the face part of it stand out maybe. But then the last thing, as you were just joining in, I was just saying that I feel like I would want to have the hand just a little bit bigger, just so that it's a bit more obvious that the hands are of a different proportion and that it's not a proportion mistake. Because in the silhouette it's very obvious that this hand is longer, but it almost, at first glance when I first saw it, I thought it was like a proportion error, but then I was like, oh wait, but it's a robot arm, and here I can tell that it's way longer than it should be, so it feels intentional. So I'm kind of like, oh, then I would lean into that intentionality even more. I would exaggerate the proportions just a little bit more so that it's a bit clearer that they're not supposed to be, that it's not supposed to be like just longer. But yeah, overall is really good. I know that you just joined, but I mentioned it at the beginning. I really love this. I think this is like an awesome illustrated piece. Turned out really, really good. Oh, cool. Oh, okay, nice. Is that like a little reference to Scott Pilgrim? I forgot what her name is. Like the girl from the volume 3, the robot, the drummer girl with the robot arm. Forgot her name though, but okay, nice. Now I won't stop. Scott Pilgrim, what? Oh my goodness. But yeah. Yeah, no, this looks really cool. Yeah, honestly, I think everything looks pretty good. I think this one is like your most successful. I was saying too that it feels like did you work on this more recently? Because this one, just technical skill wise, looks more refined than these ones. I like the shape language of this one a little bit. Well, this is more my cup of tea than the other ones, but I would say that if you are not too sure which style to lean into, I would say try to pick one. But I personally like this one more. But if you're like, no, I like these ones more, then I would make sure that whenever you're doing kind of some illustrated kind of piece, that they're somewhat like consistent in terms of like the eye design, the eye shape here. The face shape is also a little bit different. This one's a little bit rounder and quote unquote a little bit more realistic. Oh, actually something that I noticed here, the ear, just like a small adjustment, the ear would be back here. Oops. The ear would be back here. And like everything else is the same. And then you can have the hair, like the earring, and the hair would be like here. But the ear would be back over there, not down there. So when we're looking down on the face, the ear is usually like higher. And then when the person is looking up, they usually sit a little bit lower. Oh, really? Oh, that's that's so interesting. Yeah, I feel like this is like really, really well done. Like the shape language is, I don't know, it's very different. The eye shape is sharper and the face shape is a little bit more rounder, so to speak. Whereas like the other ones, like the eye shape feels a little bit rounder and more ovally and more almond-like. Whereas and then the face has a bit more of a sharper cut. Whereas like this one is a bit more organic feeling. But yeah. Is it my usual style? Okay, okay. I don't think it's that sketchy. I wouldn't say that it's too rough. Let's see. Oh, it's 10:30. But yeah, I think that's about it. We have 2 more people, but I think this turned out really, really good. It's just, I think you're on the right track. It's kind of, maybe I would experiment a little bit more with the robot arm, but then also maybe experiment a little bit more with like what you can play around with the hair, both on the ones that are right below the ear, or maybe experiment around with the ponytail fluff part. I think that would like really cement your character. But unless it's different, because I notice now here on your main character, the hair is not the same as how it is for the pirate version or variant, so to speak. So maybe again, actually, the cat one, the regular one, I guess it looks not too bad with the way the hair is here. Yeah, I think we'll call it here for this one, unless anybody has any questions. Not super, because that's totally okay. I think overall, like, this drawing is like really, really good. I didn't really have too much to say for it, because I was just like, oh, it was really cool. I just wanted to kind of highlight it, but then also have a few pointers I wanted to mention. And then totally turned out that you showed up, so it was kind of neat. Okay, so we'll move on to the next person, but thank you, Larry, for submitting. Next person is PigFeathers, and oh, also forgot, I don't know if I shouted out Larry. You can check Larry out on their Instagram. Where is Emily? Let me see. Larry Moments. This is their Instagram. So if you want to check out her Instagram, this is where you can find her. Larry Moments. Cool. Okay, nice. Next person we have is PigFeathers. And PigFeathers, you can also find them on Tumblr. Wait, let me see. Tumblr, Facebook, and Blue Sky by the same name. PigFeathers. Exactly like this. Let's see. And then let's see what they wrote. They wrote, oh, okay, there's a lot. Felicia is the wife of the MC of my comic. She can be both very loving and kind, but is also tough as nails. She is fiercely protective of her family, but also has a jealous streak. At first, she can come off odd, or cold, I mean, but she softens up as she gets to know you. She was raised by activists and taught self-defense and shooting from an early age. She is a doctor and served as an army medic. She rescued her pet snake Noni from some cultists. Cool. Nice. Okay, next one is Jeanette, is one of my main bad guys, a self-serving witch who will do anything to come out on top. Enslaved by an evil immortal monk for a couple of 100 years, she is very angry at the world and has no friends or companions. Wow, that's sad. Okay. She is, once free, her attitude does not improve, but instead she becomes that much more dangerous to our heroes. Interesting. And then last one is Zaya. Nobody knows how old Zaya is, but it must be a lot. Raised by Mongolia as an eagle huntress, totally a real thing. Oh, interesting. Look them up. She trained to hunt monsters once her people realized she was a Khazar who carries the fierce spirit of a dog who can track evil. After destroys her village. She spends many years hunting the infamous Dracula. Oh, okay. It is during the penultimate fight with evil vampire that she is drawn into the life of my MC, a newborn baby who she then becomes a mentor and grandmother figure to. And then they wrote at the very end, I love my characters and these designs, but for a webcomic, I am afraid I've made things difficult for myself by including too much detail. I prefer to develop things in my sketchbook, but official art and actual comic will be digital. Oh, okay. Cool. Well, thank you, PigFeathers. These are some really cool characters. Oh, no problems, Larry. Glad you're able to join us. Kevin says the shape languages here are not bad. You can tell a lot based on their shapes. yeah, so I was gonna say right off the bat, my favorite is Zaya. I really love the shape language in Zaya. In regards into like your comment about like your characters being too detailed, I think that really just comes down to how much work you want to put in. If you feel like there's ways to kind of maybe strip down the details or rein it in a little bit, I would say go for it, but keep in mind of what your main shape was. So off the top of my head, like Zaya is definitely kind of almost this like hermit round shape, which is really cool. I really love Zaya's shape language and shape design here. Just this rounded kind of curvature shape that's here is really neat, and it does a really good job of framing her head. So I think if you were to ever simplify Zaya, Zaya might be the easiest one to simplify. It's a lot of round shapes. It's a lot of curvatures. I would highly recommend, and I say this all the time, any chance I get, check out Wolfwalkers. Your design shape language kind of reminds me of Wolfwalkers a little bit. And I would highly recommend you check out the concept artwork done for Wolfwalkers, because you can see that they did a lot to see how they could experiment with each of the characters' shapes and how the different shapes and line work kind of combines and flows into one another. So it was really cool seeing kind of the concept art for that movie, because they really had to play around with like playing around with the shapes, but not too much, because you can definitely get really lost in the details of it. And not only that, but because it's animated, you have to make sure that the shapes and the designs looked cool, but they were also practical in how they were animated. So I feel like some of the coolest, most recent modern animation character designs are from Wolfwalkers, and I can't wait for their next movie. But yeah, your design kind of reminds me a little bit of it. But as I was saying, if I were to kind of simplify this, maybe it might be the circle, kind of like these rounded pieces here. I could maybe take away these circular marks. Wait, is that part of her like ponytail? I guess it is. Actually, that's kind of cool. If this is part of her hair, I like these little X's in it. The fur, I would maybe simplify and not have all these little hatch marks to them, but then instead have it be big. I don't know how much you'd be able to simplify, but maybe you could play around with like some waves for the fur. Definitely it will come down to just experimenting and trying things out. But like, yeah, even shapes like this, you can maybe just like simplify it to wavy shapes and then only have like really big X's across it. But it's kind of like stripping down and figuring out like what these shapes would look like without all the details. Like if you were to kind of just summarize in a way the shapes and details on your characters, what would it look like? Same thing with your Jeanette costume here. There's a lot of details and intricacies here, but if you were to simplify it, what would it look like? You could probably actually take away these bands that are here and just focus on the corset that's here. And this almost, you can change it into a triangular shape. But again, this is why this is really more of like a personal preference approach and how you want to deal with maybe stripping back and taking away the details, because it's really going to come down to you on how much you want to take away. So maybe it would just be this for the dress, and then this part you can maybe just have it be the corset, and then up top would be the collar, and then this button area, but you wouldn't show the buttons, maybe something like that. I know it like kind of takes away from the texture and the patterns of your characters, but that is why it's kind of really up to you on how much you want to simplify it and how much you want to take away from the initial details. I think if it's, oh right, that's true. If it's did she say webtoon or webcomic? I think she said webcomic. So luckily you're not going to be animating this. So that's why I'm like, I think you could, it really just depends on how much work you want to put in. If you want to put in the work and the time, then I think it's totally fine to have this level of detail on your characters. But yes, it's going to be a lot of work, and a lot of kind of patience putting in all this kind of details. But if you do feel like it might be a bit too much of a task to handle, then I would maybe just simplify it kind of in the way that I'm showing here, where you focus more on the larger shapes and take away some of the tinier, minute details. So as an example, I would keep, if I were to keep kind of expanding on the cuff here, whoops, I would take it like this. And then maybe the stripe is kind of up to you. Stripes, honestly, I don't think it's too big of a deal. So if you don't want the stripes, it's up to you. I kind of like these circular elements, so at the very least, maybe I would include them. But maybe it wouldn't make sense now because there's nothing attached to them. So maybe not. The buttons, again, what you could do is you make them bigger. And maybe you just have 2 instead of like 4. And the same thing here, you just have like 2 instead of 4. Or you just have 1. 1 could be a good approach too. I know it's not realistic in the sense of like that's how a corset would be approached, but again, it's kind of like playing around with like what your limitations might be. The details work in a chibi version of your character. You're doing something right. That, you know, that's a good way of thinking about it too. Not the buttons on the top part. Yeah, that could be another approach too. So Kevin gave you another suggestion, which is like you do the lines but not the buttons. The lines could work, but again, it changes like the... I don't know if your outfit is based on any particular culture, because you did mention Mongolia. So this is more of a note for PigFeathers. Like if you are basing outfits on like culturally accurate outfits, then it might be a good idea to make sure like some design elements, whether it's the buttons, the ties, like the cinches on the outfits, like that's there's a reason why those design elements are placed on the outfit. So if you're doing any of those researches, then it might be a good idea to like, oh, you know, why are you putting lines here versus lines in a circle, or do you want to just put the buttons or the circles there? Because for me, I would say that when you have lines, this reminds me a little bit more of like more Asian, like Chinese style of outfits, like those kind of like traditional Chinese outfits have those kind of like binding things. I don't know what they're called, but yeah, that's why it really comes down to what the original reference looks like and how you find ways to simplify it. But that could be an approach. The other thing is same thing here. I would streamline the arms. You don't have to have the cuffs pop up. You can maybe just have the stripe there and have it be completely flat. And then you can have like maybe like one circle or something. Just basically you make things a little bit bigger and a little bit more like simplified. And then the corset here, this one honestly is not too big of a deal actually. Other than the circles, I would I put the circles there? I would maybe not put the circle. That's a tough one actually. Let me see. I would maybe do this, like have a line and then no circles, because circles would be tougher. But X's, lines, stripes, I feel like that's easier to pull off. So I'm not gonna do it for all of your characters, but this is something that you can kind of consider and mull over in terms of your own character designs and see if like how much you can strip away, what is important to your characters, what is the important elements, and is it important enough where if you took it away, it changes the feel and the story of your character. But if it is important, then you definitely want to keep it and see if like how much of it can you like simplify and kind of shave down in a sense. Actually, and then one thing that I did kind of notice, or at least what struck me, is that I feel like your shape language is much stronger with Zaya, but then Jeanette and I forgot this first character's name, Felicia. they feel a little bit more grounded than Zaya is. And I think it's because Zaya has such a strong shape here that's so also very stylistic and exaggerated that part of me kind of wants the same to be applied to the other characters. And I know that this is the cliche, but I do feel like maybe you could have like a really big, like this crown part. I don't know, it could be bigger. And then the hair is like maybe down here. And then the face maybe not too long. Or maybe not too big feeling. So like, let's say this is the character's face shape. Not going to draw the details, but I kind of want this crown part, headpiece, to be longer. And then the cliche part is, I was going to say, you make the rest of the body a little bit more longer and tapered in. So this is the body, maybe, because Jeanette has a much more like triangular shape to her figure, and part of me kind of feels like it would help to have a much more, if you really lean into those triangular shapes of, and I feel like maybe even the shoulder pads could be like triangular almost. And then you can have like really thin arms over here. So that like it kind of is a little bit more in line with I don't know, the shapes. I'm not just like with Bop or all the other kind of peep submissions. I'm not saying that this is kind of like the solution, but I feel like there's so much kind of cool shapes being worked with here. Everything feels very uniform, like the round head with the round body with the round arms. Even these round elements from like the hair is there. But Jeanette, I don't know. Not to say that you can't have a really large head, but it feels like the body is more of like a traditional just approach to the figure, whereas there's a much more stylized and pushed and experimental elements in Zaya that's not quite there or consistent in Jeanette's kind of figure or character design. The face is really cool. Like if I cover the body, the face is really cool. And then but then the body, just if I cover the face without the face, the body looks very just kind of standard, kind of normal. That's why I was like, oh, maybe you can play around with like the hair, maybe, I don't know, like the crown or headpiece that's at the top. Like she's supposed to be much kind of like dangerous, so I feel like having irregularities could be cool. Yeah, so Indigo kind of mentioned Coraline. That's something that you could like maybe even look into as well. Like we can give her a very abnormally long neck. Could be an interesting one. Really sharp big shoulder pads maybe, so that the neck, it almost kind of disguises how long the neck is. And then you can have like really long arms too. I don't know if like even the pose too. I feel like the pose could be this like almost like the hands in the middle. You know how like sometimes when people are plotting or they're kind of scheming, they have their hands together like this. And then like if you look at the arms are way lower than what they would normally be. So again, you're playing around with the proportions and the shape language. You're keeping the triangular shape that's kind of seen in Jeanette's face and the sharpness of it, but kind of kept throughout the whole thing. So this is maybe something I would play around with. That feels like it's consistent with how Zaya is. And then when it comes to Felicia is like pretty cool. I think the standout element for me from Felicia's design is like maybe the shoes at the bottom and the snake. I feel like since everything feels much larger than life in all of these characters, or at least these first two characters. Felicia actually feels the most tame and the most kind of normal, I guess. I don't know if that's what you're going for, but if you want to push it a little bit, maybe we could play around with like the earrings is a really cool one. You can make the earrings maybe a little bit more interesting, like maybe slightly larger, maybe not larger. More larger might be a little bit too much, but maybe the glasses could be like an interesting shape or color. Then I like the two half kind of, what is this, like a jungle, like a shirt is really cool. But then the snake is like a cool element. If the snake is like a component that is actually part of her design, like it's always going to be with Felicia, then I would actually try to incorporate the snake into the flow of the body and the design. But yeah, because right now the design of Felicia feels very tame, very kind of just standard, and I would try to find a way to make it a little bit more interesting. And then also just in general, proportion wise, the arms might be just a little bit too long. I would maybe bring the shoulders in a little bit, and maybe even a little bit higher. And then the elbow would be like here. And so the other arm would be like here. So the hand would be like here. And then this hand, I would have it do something a little bit different maybe. So this one could be maybe outstretched downwards. So the snake can like visibly wrap around it. And then the legs, I would make the legs just a teeny bit longer. Even if this person is a little bit more of a stocky person, I would have the legs just be a smidge longer than what it is currently. Like down here maybe would be a good height. And then you can even push up the shirt maybe. That could be something. So these are more like just general proportions that I would do. Oh, also Lichen the Goober, I'm so sorry. So submissions are actually closed, but I would highly encourage that you keep an eye out for like any other announcements for submission kind of streams like this one. I believe Iggy and Gonzalo have an upcoming one. I don't know if that's done actually, but is that? Oh, I guess it is done. My bad. But like, there's definitely, we're gonna have more of these. This is not the only one, so keep an eye out for these submission opportunities, because you never know. So I would again highly recommend anybody who has maybe missed this out that you join our Discord, keep an eye out for announcements, and we'll definitely be having more of these because we always do these kind of like every now and then throughout the years. So yeah, always a good idea to keep in mind. It's for the stream. Oh, yeah. We schedule a lot of streams kind of ahead of time, so it might be for a different one. But no worries. Glad you're kind of looking into it ready and getting ready. But yeah, this is kind of how I maybe would change the shape of Felicia. Zaya, I think honestly is perfect. I would not change Zaya at all. Zaya's great. But Felicia and Janet, I would definitely kind of maybe play around with the proportions and try to find an interesting element to kind of hone in on. Okay, so we got a few more minutes. We might go over just a little bit. But then our last one is by Gizmo. And Gizmo is, let's see, what did they say? Gizmo's near the end. Let's see. The character is part of shape language assignment based off of a circle. They're quite the doormat, awfully shy too, but they are very sweet and gentle. Wanted to know how I can push these traits further into their design. Nice. I really love the sketchbook stuff. So Gizmo, if you guys don't know, or has been kind of a part of our membership as well. So I've seen a lot of Gizmo stuff, and they've shown up in our classes before too. So seeing them kind of improve and everything has been like really, really cool. But yeah, I love the traditional stuff. I feel like the marker stuff turned out really, really cool. I actually really love the way that you approach shadows and almost like the personality that's seen in the sketchbook version. I like it a little bit more than the digital one actually. Um, Not to say the digital one's not good, but the traditional one has a lot of personality and character that I really like. That I feel like is maybe missing a little bit. It could be just that there's no shadows or not too much shadows on the digital one. But the reason why I brought this one up is kind of similar to what I had to say about the was it the insect one, the ordnance one. So if we go back to the ordnance one, it was kind of about like the shape language overall with the whole entire creature. And I feel like whenever it comes to animals and creatures, um, uh, it's a little bit more important than. No, maybe I shouldn't say it's more important, but it's I think it stands out a lot more with creature design. Creature design, you almost want to always consider how the creature ends up looking as a whole, whereas with human designs, I feel like because we're usually more attentive to the faces of characters, we end up paying a lot more attention to the faces of characters. So even if the character is like maybe body or the clothing is not that great, if the face looks great, we kind of usually give it a pass. But with creatures, I feel like it's a little bit tougher, where you can't always get away with just having a good face design or just like a good backstory for the creature. I feel like you have to almost always consider the entirety of the creature. So like, how does the creature end up coming off as a whole, the silhouette of it? How does the head flow into the body? What are some interesting textures and qualities and characteristics that show up on the body? And then how does that lead into like the arms and then the overall like weight and stance? Because I feel like it has a lot more no pun intended, but it has a lot more weight in how you capture the pose and posture of a creature than how it is for a human. Although it's kind of different. Um, but all is that to say is that I think with this one, what I would try to push, I know that it's circle based. Um, but this is where kind of what I wanted to mention in the beginning, which is that maybe it's a little bit too much circle. So I know that you got these like horns over here, and I feel like the horns are really, really cool. uh, I'm wondering if you can like maybe have it come up more, like frame the face a little bit more, and I feel like you could lean into having it be just a little bit sharper. But like the overall weight and sense of the creature, oh, I really like how it is here actually. I feel like some element or detail is just lost in the way this character's form is. Maybe like the arm here makes it a little bit lost. The proportions feel a little bit odd too, where this one feels like a proper good proportion, but this one feels a little bit too long. So I feel like the arm would be somewhere around here rather than like all the way out here. And then the body, I think maybe just the way the tail is curving out, I would have it maybe tuck in a little bit more and overlap the hands before it comes back over here. So just showing a little bit more like distance and showing a little bit more kind of like showing a little bit more overlap and depth in the form, I think would be like really good and help out with this creature. I think overall it works really well though. Actually, this one reminds me of like Neopets. Reminds me a little bit of like the kind of design style of Neopets. Oh, I don't know if anybody knows what Neopets is, but yeah, Neo kind of has like Neopets vibes. I mean, like overall the circular form looks really good. I just think everything is it's a little bit even throughout. So maybe what I would play around with is like if the head is bigger. Let's say this is like the head shape and form. maybe I would extend the neck a little bit. Also, there's a little bit of a neck inconsistency. I would like just pick one or the other. I feel like if you're going for something a little bit cuter, then I would have a shorter neck. If you're going something with a little bit more animalistic kind of form, then I would go with a longer neck. And then I would maybe give it a little bit of like a muzzle, not muzzle. Is it muzzle? You know how like lions, the mane, there's a little bit of like a fluff, like the neck gets a little bit thicker at the base, and then it comes in just like a little bit more beforehand. I feel like you could do something like that. You get a little bit of like these rounder shapes around the neck, so that it's not too smooth. There's almost like a separation for the neck and the body. Again, these are just ideas, just spitballing some ideas. And you got the horns here. I like the horn. Oh, you know, I really like how high and large these horns are, actually. Very, like, dinosaur-esque. I like that more. Like, the larger, almost stegosaurus kind of horns that are there. Those are really good. Let's see. I like the round body that you have over here, and then the arms. Maybe the body is a bit too big. For mine, the one that I've drawn. Maybe that's a bit too big. Arms are really good. Honestly, I don't really have too much. I think is like what I would tighten up is maybe the design shape language that you're kind of using to guide yourself. Don't feel like you need to pigeonhole yourself too much in making sure everything is round, but go back to the shape, or not the shape design, but the design aesthetics. So a lot of people end up kind of focusing a lot on just like, oh, you know, shape language, shape design, I gotta rely on it completely. But shape design and shape language is really there to help guide you and get the ball rolling in the design. But at the end of the day, you know, I would say consider more just like, does it look good? Is it kind of too busy? Is there too much information going on? Is it legible? Is it clear? If I have some kind of characteristic or personality goals for my character to have, like it's supposed to be mean or nice, does that come through in the character's mannerisms and posture? And those things, those questions that you ask yourself as you're designing the character, that is what's going to help make your decisions. So again, yes, shape language, design, silhouettes, those are all going to help you as you're designing and finesse and fine-tune your designs. But at the end of the day, you can also still just kind of rely on like what looks good. And that's kind of how you know, each of us are going to come up with like unique and interesting designs. So I feel like there's something here. There's something really good here. But no, I feel like the shape design is like really, really good. You've got a really good kind of form going on. I would think maybe you could just add like some rounded shape here to thicken up the neck, maybe? So that there's a separation, a visual separation between the neck and the torso. Maybe you can even add kind of like a mane, not a mane, but like, you know, the chest fluff that could be there, just so that there's a separation between the head and the body. But again, these are just like maybe my quick observations on what I would change. Okay, so that's kind of it. Thank you, Gizmo, for submitting, but also thank you everybody else for submitting as well. So as a quick way of giving kind of like a shouting out and thanking everybody for submitting, I'm gonna show off what other people submitted, and just quickly read off the names of people who submitted, because I feel like it's kind of awesome. Goldenboi, I feel like, yeah, I think I have your piece, but here is a piece by Ender. I think this was like a really cool drawing and character design. Again, awesome like backstory here. Honestly, I don't really have too much other than maybe the character's a little bit too parallel, a little bit too kind of stick like, not in terms of that the person is skinny, but like it's very everything is very uniformly thin. But other than that, I think it's heading in a really good direction. Next one is by Hunter. Really awesome design here and character. Maybe my quick tip is that if you're kind of leaning into more of like proportions and anatomy, I would say that try to do a little bit more of some anatomical studies here. The arm might be a little bit too long, unless it's intentional, and the transition between the shoulder into the arm is flowing a little bit odd. Usually the shoulder flows in more like this, and then the chest, rather than cutting off in the way that you had it. But other than that, like, really cool hair design, and I really like the way that you've drawn the face. There might be a little bit of a style inconsistency on the profile view. I would maybe make the eye just like a little bit larger so that it matches how it's drawn in the other angles, but cool character. And also, hey Gizmo, glad you're able to hop on real quick. This one is by Yun. Awesome, really cool outfit. I love the color scheme of this one. I don't really have too much to say on the character design because, you know, you're using really striking colors already, so really cool stuff. Next one is by Skull. The character's name is Ash. Really love this like foreshortened pose. I feel like this is almost like something that I did beforehand, and this pose is really cool. Oh, you know what? I feel like I kind of recognize this posture, but it's not, you know, it's not like a super like crazy posture or pose or anything, but I feel like I've seen this before. Not in a bad way, but it's cool that you're using references to help guide the poses, because I think it's working really well for your character. Yeah, other than that, like, not really anything to it. I feel like you put so much emphasis on the boots that, again, you know, being a shoe guy, I feel like I would make the boots a little bit bigger at the bottom. Oh, and that's it. And the next one is by MarvelBlaze? I think I missed a letter here, but really cool design here, really awesome. Which, honestly, the reason why I didn't like go over this one is because it's just like, I feel like it's kind of ready. I feel like it's done. There's some really cool alternate outfits and experimentations with like where this could go. But yeah, I feel like it's ready. It's just really kind of just down to you in terms of the decisions as to like what color scheme and outfit design you want to go for, because I think it works already. And then we got one by Billy or Moon. Really cute character design, so round, very cool. I really love the details and the flow of this character, especially Sunny. Also, this is an awesome typeface design. That's a real, I love how boxy and fitted in that font is. But yeah, really cool lighting and outfit and color scheme on this one. The turquoise with the maroon red works really, really well. And then next we got one by Sasha. Really great line work and shadow work here. Almost reminds me of like old comic book pieces. Oh, hey, thanks Gizmo. Oh, thank you so much for donating. Yeah, thank you Gizmo for the $5. Thank you so much. And then next one is by SinfulBee. Really great detail work. I did have like a quick thought here. I don't know if this one maybe cuts it a little bit close to one of the characters from Castlevania. Like the main kind of villain in like season 2, I think, starting from season 2. Like it looks eerily familiar. I don't know if maybe it's done on purpose, but other than that, like the drawing looks really cool, the rendering looks really nice, but yeah, maybe a little bit too close for comfort in my opinion. But then this one looks really good. I did my kind of quick thoughts or critique for it is like maybe it's a little bit too busy, so I would kind of maybe tone down or push out more of like one of the things that you have here, because everything is very bright and then very dark, and then there's a lot of like details going on, so I would maybe pick one element to emphasize more. So maybe it could be the collar. You can make that even bigger, or something. But yeah, there's a lot going on here, but it's still good though. This is really, really nice. Okay, and then the next one is Zipporah. Really cool angel design. feel like there could be maybe a bit more on the outfit, but yeah, it's very, very cool outfit and angel design. And then we got one by Cali. Almost reminds me of like a art that you would see in like a video game or something, like maybe Ace Attorney or something. But yeah, really cool face and everything. The head is maybe a bit too large, but maybe that's the style you're going for. Also, really love the rendering of this octopus. But yeah, nice stuff. And then one here for, I gotta scroll through all these. We got Max here. I guess he's called, one of his the bar guy. Yeah, neat outfits. Again, I feel like the hat stands out for me here. I feel like I would want to make the hat even bigger. Kind of reminds me of the guy from the army guy from Iron Giant. So that's kind of what it reminds me of. But neat drawing. Love the traditional stuff. And then this one is by Anyone Can Draw. Really cool pose here. And really cool, like just striking pose and striking image. The chair is done really, really well. And I like the stark white contrasted with these really colorful elements there. So awesome drawing. Then we got one by Data. Really simple, straightforward, simplified design. I would maybe take away the maroon dark background just because, I don't know how much you can critique. But yeah, I feel like, you know, the maroon background is a little bit too much for this character. You lose a little bit of the details, but I like the shapes of it. I like the way the eyes look too. Don't worry, Kevin, we're almost done. And then we got Sylver here. Awesome character design, creature, dragon-like design. A part of me even kind of wants the angler element to, I don't know, I almost kind of even want to feel like the face is fake. You know, I feel like the face should be like it's a fake out. And then the real face is like hidden down here, actually. Kind of like those butterflies or spiders that have like a fake face and everything. But yeah, awesome design. And then we got one by Mr.Half Said. And I feel like I've seen this before in like the critique section, but awesome stuff here. Really love the color breakdown and the face drawing of it. The wings are really cool. Oh, nice shoes. Oh, almost didn't see that. Shoes look really good. Let me see. I don't know if I have too much to say for it, other than maybe design-wise. I don't know. The tapered, tight-fitted jacket's an interesting choice, design-wise. Or maybe I'm thinking more practicality-wise. It's an interesting choice. Because instantly my first... The first thing that stands out to me is like, how would this jacket be zipped up? But yeah. As to... Also, yes, we will get to the competition results very soon. But yeah, thank you, Mr.Half Said. And then last one is by Goldenboi. I don't know if you're still here, Goldenboi, but here are your drawings. I guess since you're here, I am actually not too sure if all of these are your drawings, or if like some of them are references and then some of them like are your drawings. So I don't know if these ones are yours, and then it looks like, oh, actually it says Gonzalo, but I don't know if that's Gonzalo, like our instructor Gonzalo, or if the character's name is Gonzalo. The first one is mine. Okay, so like these ones are yours. Oh, okay. Yeah, no, really cool shapes. I like how simplified it is. It looks really cool. I guess, yeah, you're doing like fan art versions of all these characters from Iggy and from Gonzalo. So yeah, I feel like these turned out really, really good. I feel like because you have a much more simplified style, I would take away the folds on the clothing. You can still add maybe some bumps on the outside to imply the bagginess. But I would maybe take away these really, really extreme folds around like the bottom of the arm and the torso. Even if you wanted to add them, I would just add maybe just one line or two. But yeah, other than that, like really cool way of extracting like what the character looks like and making it your own style. So awesome stuff. Oh, okay. So we got one last thing. So, okay, before we get to that part, thank you everybody for submitting for this critique section. Hopefully I was able to offer some bit of help and advice to you guys. And but yeah, thank you all for submitting. It was great to see all your submissions. I wish we could have time to go over everybody's, but now is into the special section. I know we got overtime a little bit, but we're almost there, everyone. Yeah, we had a little bit of a competition that was held and started by Kevin. So if you guys didn't know, on one of my XPPen workshops, I did a Chinese opera character design where I took a lot of reference photos of like Chinese opera outfits. Now, I wasn't really too focused on the historical accuracy or the cultural accuracy of it, other than just like making sure that, you know, I was looking up Chinese opera designs. Definitely took some liberties with the level of details because they're way too detailed. Chinese opera outfits have so much going on that definitely not going to be able to incorporate all of those elements into the design when these workshops are about like an hour and a half long. But the challenge was Kevin asked me for the PNG, and honestly I actually didn't know why he wanted the PNG the PNG for it. So I was just like, yeah, sure, okay, here it is. And it was that he wanted the line work, and then he sent out this line work to the community, and the community had a chance to color in and render in this Chinese opera character design however they saw fit. So they colored it in their own way, they had a chance to render it, and not only that, some people added backgrounds, but then also changed the outfits, designs, and details in them, which was really, really cool to see. So, with that being said, here are the submissions. Let me see, right here. Sure, yeah. So here are the submissions. Just like with the critique session, I'm just gonna run through all the submissions, and then at the very end I'm gonna announce who won. So the first one that was submitted is by Chicken over here. I don't know why I said the name like that, but Chicken, thank you for submitting. This is like a really cool one. Really love the shadow implication that happened in the crown, and also just like the very standout purple color. I think you're the only one who colored it in purple, so you know what, I think you had a very unique and interesting take on the purple color for the character. And then the next one is by GeoCat, and GeoCat had really cool kind of background. I would say one of the best backgrounds, or one of the better backgrounds out there that we got. So some of you guys did backgrounds, but some of the backgrounds, not gonna say whose, some of them were a little wonky, but this one actually turned out really well. I really like the pattern that you got going on there, and the lighting, kind of, I don't know, the god rays coming down on the character here. So really good job on the color choices, much more softer, kind of like a pastel approach. The makeup, I think you did a really good job with the rendering, the makeup on the face. But yeah, awesome stuff. Next one is by Hidden Tides. I see you there, Hidden Tides, in the chat. So thank you for your submission. I really love the reds with the gold over here. I think you did a really good job with also the shading that's there. Shading on this character probably was not easy to do. It probably was a little bit intimidating to try out, but I think you did a really good job with it and making it feel believable with the different layers on the outfits. But yeah, the red is really striking. I think you did a really good job with kind of just mapping everything out. So yeah, awesome stuff. And the next one is by Galena. So the Galena had a really cool background. Really love the grass texture. The water, I think, is actually done really, really well. The fireworks and also the color scheme on Galena's piece is really cool too. So really good job, Galena, with yours. Also the transparency, I didn't even notice this until like a little bit later as I was figuring out who would be the winner, but the transparency, or translucency I should say, in the sleeve thing over here turned out really, really cool. Then the next one is by Clover, but this one's really cool. Really love the lighting on this one. The spotlight and dramatic lighting on this one was like really, really well done. Really love the gradation that's done here, and what I like is that even though there's no gradation I mean, with the outfit, I think it works really well because of the high contrast lighting. So really good stuff here, Clover. The color scheme too, really neat stuff. love the turquoise and teal combination. I think it works really, really well. And then accented with like the more pink kind of approaches. So yeah, nice, awesome stuff. Then the next one is by Squares. This one, honestly, I was like, the more I looked at it, the more I was like, oh dang, this turned out really good. The attention to detail, the bold red colors, but then with the glow over here on the sleeve turned out really, really well. And honestly, actually, this is the first one where I realized I added a ring on her finger. I completely forgot that there was a ring, that I drew a ring on her, and I was like, wait, what? It's like, oh, okay. But yeah, really cool lighting. Honestly, I think I would say that this one has the best glow effect applied to the rendering, at least in my opinion. I think it worked really, really well and pulled off really well. Then the next one is by Butter. The level of detail on this is awesome. Hopefully you guys can see it on the screen, but yeah, in the comments they even mentioned that they went a little bit crazy with the details, and yeah, they changed what the original design and pattern was and added their own, so that's really, really cool. Oh, also, I'll mention this really quickly, but Clover did have a backstory on it, which was just like, oh hey, you know, like they've apparently done these things before, like some kind of traditional cultural dance piece, and there's something with like the green in the outfit looked terrible, so then when they got a chance to color this is their take on how they would change the green. And I thought that was like a really cool backstory for the piece, so thank you for adding that. And then next one is Loop. Yeah, this one, I really like the background for this one. I think this one is the closest to, I think, what I would have expected in terms of like a background for this character, but feels kind of like a stage background, feels more like a kind of those Chinese opera kind of designs or for the background. But yeah, no, this is really cool. I like the sketching rendering. Definitely very different, more kind of unique approach to it, but I think it works really well. Captures almost this photo graininess to it, so it's kind of neat. Yeah, definitely the coloring helps a lot. And then third last, we got one by Skull Mustache. I guess, you know, the dark, heavy colors matches your name. I really like how dark this one. This one was definitely a different approach to it. Really unique and dramatic kind of coloring scheme for this one. So awesome take on the character. And then next one is by Guy here. So Guy definitely went for a very, very different color scheme. Got the teals and the cools, but the yellow was more of like this gold yellow in the crown, but this almost lime green approach for it. So really awesome stuff here. And Guy has definitely improved a lot in terms of your coloring and rendering skills. I feel like you've gotten cleaner with your line works and coloring, so this turned out really, really good. And then last but not least is Dusk. So another really cool, two different versions. One's a bit more flatter color, and then one has like a really kind of interesting lighting scheme for it. But yeah, that's kind of it for everybody. So thank you everybody for submitting. I hope you guys had a lot of fun with this challenge. I know that this challenge was more of like out of the blue, so I don't know, maybe Kevin will do these again. But yeah, so now we announce the winner. Ooh. So the winner out of, I don't know how many are there. There's like 11 of you guys. The winner is which one is it? It is Butters. So congratulations, Butters, for winning the competition. Honestly, it was a really close kind of race between a few of these, but Butters, I think, kind of took the win for me just because like the level of detail and rendering, but also cleanliness in the rendering turned out really, really well. I think you put in a lot of you know, I can't even imagine the amount of the details that you put in here, but the glow effect, contrast lighting that you have here works well. I think you did an awesome job with the makeup. The color scheme is really cool. I love just that emerald jade coloring scheme kind of fading into the red. It looks really good too, but yeah, this turned out really, really good, and I think you did a good job with tackling the background and the composition, because that's not easy to do. But I like the more graphic approach to it. And hello, Quinn. I feel like it's been so long since I've seen you. Long time no see. I'm glad you're able to catch a little bit of it, and hopefully you get a break after writing your paper on the exciting topic of concrete. But yeah, thank you, Butters, but also thank you everybody for submitting. And again, Butters, I guess you are here. Yeah, Serious Quack. I think that's you, right? But yeah, we'll reach out to you, and we'll kind of keep in touch so that you know so you'll know kind of what the reward, or well, you know what the award is, but yeah, we'll contact you so you know what will happen afterwards and everything. So yeah, congrats, and thank you everybody who submitted and worked hard on this one piece. And yeah, well, I guess seems like you guys want more of these coloring competitions, and yeah, we'll kind of do more of these hopefully then. And yeah, I guess that is it. So this was like a really long, much longer than usual stream, but I guess we have to call it here. And yeah, I guess I'll just, I don't know, how should I, you know, we'll just end it off so there's no bias or anything. But thank you everybody for the awesome stream. Hope you guys had fun with this one, getting to see like the different pieces that you guys have submitted, kind of the advice and critiques I got, but then also the little shout out for the the competition. So yeah, thank you guys for joining the stream. If you guys don't know, my name is Josh. I'm one of the instructors here at Wing Canvas, and if you don't know who we are at Wing Canvas, we are an online school, and our mission is to make art education easily accessible to everyone. So join us for free live stream lessons on YouTube every week and level up your skills with our community of art nerds. We stream again on Saturday at 3 p.m. Eastern and Mondays at 9 p.m. Eastern every week. So if you don't want to miss a thing, definitely subscribe or even follow us on Discord and social media. We like to make announcements ahead of time so you guys know what we're streaming, the topics, and if there's any kind of, I don't know, community involvement regarding those streams. So if you missed out on this submission, best way to stay, you know, ahead of things is to follow us on Discord. And again, we're more than just a YouTube channel. We're an online school of illustration and visual storytelling dedicated to helping artists turn their passion into income. And a huge shout out to our amazing students and members for supporting our mission. We love seeing the incredible artwork and watching you guys grow in our classes and weekly critiques. And if you'd like to dive deeper, join our Discord and access the stream notes and demos, exclusive artwork, art challenges, and more free resources to help you guys improve. So come connect with your fellow art nerds and get inspired. And that about wraps it up. Thank you again, everybody, for joining the stream. Hope you guys have a good rest of the week and a good rest, and hopefully I'll catch you guys on the next live stream. So let's see what's happening next. Let's just quickly see who's up next before we officially close things. On October, for Saturday, we got Iggy, who's doing a Q&A. Ooh, that's nice. And then on Monday, it's going to be a Q&A with Faye. Wow, okay. And it says, you can pick my weird artist brain. That's a fun title. But yeah, that's going to be cool. I don't know, maybe if I have time, I'll hop on and ask Faye some questions. And then we got Thanksgiving. So the October 11th and 13th, there will be nothing because it is Thanksgiving for us in Canada. But yeah, keep an eye out for October 4th and 6th. Those will be Q&A streams with Iggy and Faye. So I don't know, get your questions ready. Bombard them with all your weird questions. But yeah, thank you. That's about it. And hopefully you guys have a good night. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.